There is a moment, perhaps today, perhaps right now, when you finally decide enough. Not from anger, not from fear, but from awakening. A moment when you realize that chasing someone who keeps pulling away is not a sign of love. It's a sign of you abandoning yourself. And the second you stop chasing, everything begins to change. Because here's the truth. You were never designed to beg for someone's presence. You were designed to stand in your value, rooted, grounded, unshakable. When you stop chasing the avoidance, something powerful happens. Your energy stops leaking. You stop living in the anxious what if, and you return to the divine certainty of I am enough. You see, when you chase someone who resists closeness, you send a message to your own soul that their comfort matters more than your dignity. But the moment you step back, the universe takes a deep breath. It reorganizes things. Your nervous system stabilizes. Your confidence resurfaces. Your spirit remembers who it is. And suddenly you're no longer the pursuer. You're the chooser. You're no longer chasing connection. You're creating standards. You're no longer seeking validation. You're embodying worth. If the avoidant truly values you, they rise. They meet you. They step into the space you've created. But if they don't, then stepping back reveals the truth that was always there. And knowing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is liberation. When you stop chasing, something else happens too. Your life starts flowing again. Your vision clears. Your purpose gets louder. Your heart opens to people who can meet you, love you, and grow with you. You're not meant to be an emotional contortionist trying to fit into someone's limited capacity. You're meant to expand into your highest expression, to live with passion, power, and peace, to be surrounded by people who value your presence, not just tolerate it. This is your moment. Not to withdraw from love, but to return to self-love. Not to shut down, but to level up. Not to chase, but to attract from a place of wholeness. So take a breath, straighten your spine, stand in your truth. Because when you stop chasing the avoidant, you stop running from yourself. And that is when life finally begins to respond with everything you deserve. Releasing the chase shifts your energy from anxiety to inner alignment and self-worth. And this shift is far more profound than most people realize. When you're caught in the dynamic of pursuing someone avoidant, your entire emotional system becomes externally oriented. Your attention stretches outward in a constant attempt to read signals, interpret silences, and anticipate their next move. You invest so much time trying to decode them that you begin to lose your connection to yourself. Your energy becomes fragmented, scattered between hope, fear, longing, and self-doubt. But the moment you stop chasing, that energy begins returning home. At first, this shift can feel uncomfortable, even frightening, because your nervous system has gotten used to the chase. It may have started to confuse intensity with intimacy and uncertainty with passion. When you step back, the adrenaline of emotional pursuit fades, and the silence can feel like withdrawal. But this is actually the beginning of healing. The stillness isn't emptiness, it's space. Space for clarity, space for emotional regulation, space for the truth to rise. In that space, your energy starts grounding again. You begin to notice your own thoughts and feelings instead of obsessing over theirs. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your power of attention. Attention is one of the most potent forces you have. It determines what grows in your life. While you were chasing, your attention fed anxiety. It fed insecurity. It fed a dynamic where you were overgiving while receiving crumbs. But when you withdraw that attention, you start feeding something entirely different, your own self-worth. Your body loosens, your breathing deepens, your mind becomes clearer. You stop asking, how do I get them to stay? And begin asking, what do I actually want? What do I deserve? What feels aligned for me? This alignment shifts the entire emotional landscape. Instead of living in anticipation of someone else's inconsistent behavior, you begin living from your own internal compass. You reconnect with values you might have temporarily abandoned: respect, boundaries, inner peace, emotional honesty. You begin noticing subtle forms of self-betrayal you tolerated in the chase. Shrinking your needs, downplaying your feelings, accepting less intimacy than you wanted, minimizing the pain of their withdrawals. Each realization strengthens your alignment. Each moment of clarity strengthens your self-respect. There is also a spiritual recalibration that happens. Chasing an avoidant disconnects you from your natural sense of worthiness. It creates an illusion that love is something you must earn, prove, or work hard for. But when you stop chasing, you step back into the truth that real love does not require pursuit. It requires presence, reciprocity, and emotional availability. Dropping the chase is like dropping a heavy weight you didn't even realize you were carrying. Your spirit feels lighter, clearer, closer to its original state, whole, deserving, and powerful. This shift influences how you show up in every area of life. Your conversations change because you're no longer speaking from fear. Your posture changes because you're no longer bent towards someone else's approval. Your decisions become stronger because they're guided by self-honor rather than emotional hunger. You begin attracting different experiences, healthier connections, opportunities that reflect your worth, and people who sense your new energy and respond to it with respect instead of avoidance. Stopping the chase is not an act of rejection. It's an act of remembrance. It's remembering who you were before the anxiety, before the pursuit, before the emotional imbalance. It's remembering that your energy is sacred, your attention is powerful, and your presence is valuable. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you return to yourself. And from that place, everything in your life begins to shift into alignment with the truth of your worth. When you stop pursuing someone avoidant, you reclaim your emotional, mental, and spiritual power in a way that is both subtle and life-altering. For a long time, you may not even realize how much of your power you've handed over, how much of your energy has been entangled in trying to understand, fix, or win the affection of someone who runs from closeness. Chasing an avoidant becomes an invisible drain, slowly pulling your focus away from your own life, your dreams, and your inner world. But the moment you stop, your power doesn't just return. It resets, recenters, and reactivates parts of you that had been dormant. Emotionally, the chase keeps you in a reactive state. You respond to their distance, their silence, their mixed signals. You adjust yourself in hopes that they'll open up. Over time, you begin to believe your emotional safety depends on their behavior. That belief is the root of emotional powerlessness. When you stop chasing, you break that illusion. You reclaim your right to feel secure within yourself. Instead of asking, are they going to withdraw again? You begin asking, what do I need to feel grounded? What brings peace to my heart? That shift is monumental. It turns your emotional world from a roller coaster into a sanctuary. Mentally, chasing someone avoidant hijacks your focus. It fills your mind with overthinking, analyzing, and replaying conversations. You try to make sense of their inconsistencies, and your thoughts revolve around trying to be enough for someone who is afraid of closeness to begin with. It's mental captivity, even if it feels like love. When you stop chasing, the mental fog clears. The space that was occupied by worry and analysis becomes available again for creativity, problem-solving, and personal vision. Ideas begin to flow again. Decisions feel easier. Your mind becomes your ally, not a battlefield of self-doubt. Spiritually, chasing someone who cannot show up for you disconnects you from your inner guidance. You start relying on their unpredictable behavior instead of your intuition. You might override your instincts, ignoring red flags, minimizing your needs, or resisting truth because you want the connection to work. This disconnection from intuition is one of the deepest forms of spiritual powerlessness. But when you stop chasing, you reconnect with your inner voice. You begin hearing that subtle wisdom again, the one that says, you deserve more. You are worthy of love that is stable. You are meant for connection that nourishes, not drains. Your spiritual alignment strengthens as you stop abandoning yourself. Reclaiming your power also changes the way you show up in relationships. When you're no longer chasing, you naturally establish healthier boundaries. You stop accepting bare minimum effort. You stop tolerating ambiguity. You stop shrinking your needs out of fear of pushing someone away. Instead, you begin prioritizing emotional reciprocity. You create space for people who are capable of meeting you with presence, honesty, and care. And this shift doesn't just attract better people. It teaches the avoidant that if they want access to your energy, they must rise into maturity rather than hide behind distance. Another layer of power you reclaim is your ability to choose rather than chase. As long as you're pursuing someone avoidant, you're operating from scarcity, believing this connection is rare, special, or irreplaceable. But when you stop chasing, you see the situation clearly. Love is abundant, connection is abundant, and your options expand the moment your self-worth strengthens. You stop being afraid of losing them and start recognizing the risk of losing yourself. Reclaiming your power is not a loud or dramatic moment. It's a quiet returning, a subtle realignment, a deep remembering. It's the shift from I hope they choose me to I choose myself first. And when that shift happens, everything in your world begins elevating to match the power you just reclaimed. Stepping back exposes the truth of the connection, whether it grows authentically or fades naturally. And this revelation is one of the most liberating parts of disengaging from the chase. When you are actively pursuing someone avoidant, you create a kind of noise in the relationship dynamic. Your efforts, your energy, and your pursuit blur the reality of what's actually happening. You may be carrying the connection on your shoulders without realizing it. Your effort becomes the glue, your hope becomes the fuel, and your emotional labor becomes the bridge holding things together. But when you stop chasing, the noise quiets, and the truth can finally surface. This moment of stepping back is powerful because it removes the pressure, the expectation, and the imbalance. It allows the natural state of the relationship to reveal itself without your constant effort propping it up. If the connection was only functioning because you were overextending, that becomes clear. If the other person was passively relying on your pursuit to maintain closeness while still avoiding true intimacy, that becomes clear. And if there was never a foundation strong enough to sustain a real relationship, that too becomes unmistakable. Stepping back is not only an act of self-respect, it is an act of clarity. When you stop pursuing, you allow the avoidant person to show you who they genuinely are without the distortion of your effort. If they value the relationship, they will begin to engage. They will reach out. They will make an effort. They will take steps, imperfect but intentional, toward connection. Avoidants are not incapable of intimacy. They simply struggle with it. But people who truly care will stretch, grow, and move forward when the opportunity arises. When you step back, you give them that chance. You give them the space to step into their responsibility for the connection. On the other hand, if stepping back causes the relationship to fade, it's not a sign of your inadequacy. It's a revelation of the truth. It means the connection existed primarily because of your pursuit. It means they were comfortable staying in the dynamic as long as you did all the emotional lifting. And if your distance results in silence, disinterest, or indifference, then you were not losing something meaningful. You were uncovering the reality that nothing solid was ever being built. Silence becomes information. Distance becomes clarity. Inconsistency becomes truth. This exposure of truth is essential to your growth. Too often, people hold on to fantasies of potential, what could be if the other person healed, opened up, or changed. When you stop chasing, you stop nurturing the fantasy and begin seeing the person as they truly are in the present moment. You see their capacity, their readiness, their willingness, or their lack thereof. This honesty, while sometimes painful, frees you from emotional limbo. You no longer cling to hope without evidence. You no longer invest in someone who is emotionally unavailable. You no longer confuse possibility with reality. When the truth emerges, you are able to make decisions rooted not in fear of losing them, but in clarity about what's actually happening. You stop bargaining with yourself. You stop minimizing your needs. You stop tolerating half-love or conditional affection. You begin to understand whether the connection is evolving or dissolving, and either outcome empowers you. If it grows authentically, because you are no longer forcing it. If it fades truthfully, because the relationship was not aligned with your worth. Stepping back is a spiritual act as much as an emotional one. It is the moment you surrender control and allow life to show you the truth. It is the moment you trust that what is real will stay and what is not meant for you will fall away. And in that revelation, you gain wisdom, strength, and the freedom to move forward with a heart that is grounded in reality rather than illusion. Your nervous system recalibrates, creating space for clarity, confidence, and emotional stability. And this transformation often becomes the most unexpected gift of stepping away from the avoidant-chaser dynamic. When you're entangled in a relationship where you're pursuing someone who withdraws, your body is constantly on high alert. Your nervous system becomes conditioned to unpredictability. You live in a cycle of anticipation and disappointment, waiting for a message, bracing for silence, hoping for connection, preparing for distance. This emotional roller coaster trains your body to operate in a state of hypervigilance, where even small signals can trigger anxiety or self-doubt. Chasing someone avoidant keeps your nervous system in a heightened state of activation because avoidant behavior mimics emotional threat. Their distance feels like rejection, their silence feels like danger, and their inconsistency feels like instability. Without realizing it, your body begins to interpret the relationship as something it must monitor constantly. You're not just emotionally invested, you're physiologically entangled. Your heart rate quickens when they pull away. Your stomach tightens when they take too long to respond. Your mind loops through scenarios, not because you want to overthink, but because your body is searching for safety. But the moment you stop chasing, your nervous system begins an extraordinary shift. It starts moving out of fight or flight and into a state of regulation. At first, the stillness can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because your system is used to chaos. But with time, that stillness becomes soothing. Your body begins to release the tension it once held. The hyper-alertness softens, your breath deepens, your muscles relax. You begin to experience moments of peace, real, grounded peace, not the temporary relief that comes when the avoidant person finally offers a breadcrumb of affection. This recalibration is not simply emotional, it is biological. Your brain begins shifting away from survival mode, allowing your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for clarity and decision-making, to function more effectively. When your nervous system is not hijacked by fear of abandonment or uncertainty, your thinking becomes sharper, calmer, and more rational. You stop reacting from panic and start responding from wisdom. You begin seeing the relationship not from longing, but from perspective. This clarity helps you understand what you truly need, what your boundaries are, and what kind of connection nourishes your well-being. Confidence begins to rise as a direct result of this neurological reset. When your nervous system isn't constantly scanning for emotional danger, you naturally start to feel more secure within yourself. You rely less on external validation and more on internal grounding. The anxiety that once whispered, "You're not enough," begins to lose its influence. In its place, a quieter, firmer voice emerges saying, "You deserve stability, you deserve presence, you deserve love that doesn't make your body feel unsafe." This shift in internal dialogue is a reflection of a nervous system returning to balance. As your emotional stability strengthens, you become more aware of the patterns you once tolerated. You recognize how much energy the chase consumed. You see how your body was, responding to inconsistency as though it were a threat. With this awareness, you naturally begin choosing experiences and relationships that feel safe rather than familiar. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy, and your heart becomes more aligned with relationships that support your growth instead of triggering your wounds. This recalibration also empowers you to break old cycles. When your nervous system learns what peace feels like, chaos becomes less appealing. The highs and lows of the avoidant dynamic no longer feel like passion, they feel like dysregulation. And once you've experienced internal stability, you cannot unknow it. You start protecting it. You start prioritizing it. You start attracting people who support it. Your nervous system is your internal compass. And when you stop chasing the avoidant, that compass finally steadies itself. It stops pointing toward fear and starts guiding you toward emotional truth, confidence, and a deeper sense of personal alignment. Self-respect becomes the magnet that attracts healthier relationships and deeper reciprocity. And this shift is one of the most transformative outcomes of stopping the chase. When you're caught in a cycle of pursuing someone avoidant, your self-respect gets slowly chipped away, not because you're weak, but because your emotional focus is outward. You pour your energy into keeping the connection alive, stretching your boundaries in hopes of being seen and offering empathy to someone who gives little in return. Over time, this dynamic conditions you to place the other person's needs, fears, and limitations above your own. But when you stop chasing, something powerful happens. You begin to return to yourself, and your self-respect rises like a tide. At its core, self-respect is about recognizing your inherent value and treating yourself accordingly. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the deep knowing that your emotional needs matter, your desires matter, and your heart deserves to be met with openness, not withdrawal. When you stop pursuing someone who keeps pulling away, you send a message to yourself at the deepest level. I am worthy of reciprocity. This internal shift becomes the foundation for a new way of relating, both with yourself and with others. As your self-respect strengthens, your standards naturally rise. You stop settling for half-hearted attention or inconsistent affection. You stop glorifying potential and start honoring patterns. You no longer accept proximity without intimacy or connection without commitment. This isn't about punishing the avoidant person. It's about reclaiming your right to be in relationships that nourish you instead of depleting you. With higher standards comes a new form of clarity. You begin to distinguish between emotional availability and emotional avoidance. You learn the difference between someone who tries and someone who merely tolerates your presence. When your self-respect becomes active, It starts influencing your behavior in subtle but powerful ways. You communicate your needs more openly because you no longer fear that expressing them will drive someone away. You set boundaries not as walls but as guidelines that protect your emotional well-being. You stop overgiving. You stop abandoning yourself to maintain closeness. Instead of trying to earn love, you begin allowing love to meet you, without force, without pursuit, without self-sacrifice. This energy shift is magnetic. When you embody self-respect, you attract people who sense your value and respond with reciprocity. Healthy individuals, those capable of emotional presence, recognize and are drawn to your authenticity and strength. They don't feel the need to run from connection, they lean into it. They appreciate your clarity, they admire your boundaries, they meet you not with fear, but with intention. On the other hand, people who rely on you to carry the emotional weight of the relationship will begin to fall away. They may feel uncomfortable with your newfound alignment because it exposes their own lack of effort. This isn't a loss, it's a natural filtering process. Your energy begins to repel relationships that are not aligned with your self-worth. When your self-respect rises, your tolerance for emotional inconsistency falls, and this creates space for better connections to emerge. Another powerful aspect of this transformation is how your relationship with yourself evolves. You begin to treat yourself with the same loyalty, patience, and compassion that you once reserved only for others. You celebrate your strength instead of questioning it. You validate your feelings instead of suppressing them. You take responsibility for your happiness instead of outsourcing it to someone who cannot hold it. This inner shift also affects your vision of partnership. You start imagining relationships that feel balanced, mutual, and emotionally safe. You crave depth instead of turbulence. You desire growth instead of guessing games. You realize you no longer want to chase someone. You want to walk side by side with someone who is walking toward you as well. Self-respect becomes the energy that defines what you attract and what you release. It becomes the quiet force that shapes the relationships you choose and the ones you decline. And as it grows, it transforms your entire experience of love. From one of striving to one of receiving, from one of chasing to one of honoring, from one of scarcity to one of abundance. When you stop chasing, you stop betraying yourself, and life begins responding with opportunities, peace, and genuine connection. This shift marks a profound turning point in your emotional and spiritual journey, because chasing someone avoidant often requires you to abandon parts of yourself piece by piece. You silence your intuition, you minimize your needs, you ignore your discomfort, you tolerate inconsistencies, you stretch your boundaries to maintain closeness with someone who is not meeting you halfway. Every time you overextend, a small part of you whispers, "This isn't right," but the desire to keep the connection alive overrides that internal truth. And that is the essence of self-betrayal. When you stop chasing, what you're really doing is ending the contract of betrayal. You are choosing yourself. You are choosing your worth, your voice, your boundaries, your inner peace. This shift is not about rejecting the avoidant person. It's about reclaiming the relationship you have with yourself. For the first time in a long time, you become your own ally instead of your own opponent. Self-betrayal is quiet. It doesn't show up as big dramatic moments. It's the subtle ways you dismiss your feelings for the sake of someone who cannot hold them. It's the way you convince yourself you're okay with scraps when your heart longs for depth. It's the way you rationalize behavior that hurts you because you hope it will one day change. When you stop chasing, you stop participating in those patterns. You stop negotiating your self-worth. You stop pretending you're satisfied with less than you deserve. This is the moment your inner world begins to realign. Your intuition, which you may have muted for so long, becomes loud and clear again. You start hearing the wisdom you once ignored. Your emotions, once tangled in confusion and longing, begin to simplify. You can finally distinguish between what feels good and what feels familiar. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop confusing emotional inconsistency for passion. Instead, you become anchored in truth, your truth. As you end the cycle of self-betrayal, life begins to respond to the new energy you carry. The universe mirrors the relationship you have with yourself. When you honor your needs, people who honor you appear. When you trust your intuition, you attract relationships grounded in honesty. When you stay loyal to your emotional well-being, the world opens doors that were once closed to you. Opportunities unfold because you are no longer leaking energy. You are no longer consumed by chasing or waiting or wondering. You are present, grounded, and receptive. Peace emerges as one of the first gifts of stopping the chase, not the fragile peace that depends on someone else's behavior, but a deep internal calm. You no longer carry the stress of someone else's emotional unpredictability. You no longer wake up wondering if today will be the day they pull away again. Instead, you wake up with a sense of stability because you are no longer anchored to someone who cannot anchor themselves. You create peace through alignment, not through hope. Then comes expansion. As the emotional fog lifts, you rediscover parts of yourself that got buried in the chase. Your creativity, your aspirations, your passions, your joy. You have more mental space, more emotional energy, more spiritual clarity. With self-betrayal gone, self-expression returns. You pour your energy into growth instead of pursuit. You start attracting opportunities because you're radiating authenticity, not longing. Finally, you open the door to genuine connection. When you stop chasing someone avoidant, you create space for people who want to meet you, know you, love you. You attract relationships where reciprocity is natural, not forced. You connect with people who aren't intimidated by your depth, your needs, or your heart. You create bonds built on honesty, safety, and openness. Stopping the chase isn't just the end of a cycle, it's the beginning of remembering who you are. And when you stop betraying yourself, life can finally rise to meet the level of the self-worth you've reclaimed. Thank you for allowing me to walk this journey of clarity and strength with you. Goodbye for now. May your path ahead be filled with confidence, peace, and powerful self-love.